Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Derp Your Hooves. Today we're going to check the oil and check under the hood of a 2007 Toyota Camry Hybrid. So you open the hood latch right here after you've released it under the dashboard, and you'll see there's a yellow loop sitting right there, and we're going to pull that out because that's the oil dipstick. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it out, and you always make sure the engine is off. And then it's been sitting, for maybe about a minute or so the oil can go back in the pan. And then you pull the dipstick out. You make sure you got a rag or paper towels or something to wipe all the oil off. And the oil in this car is not too dirty. It doesn't need an oil change. It's not black. It's still kind of like an amber color. And you'll see that there's those two dots that are right there on the dipstick. And those are important because after I pull it back out, the oil, after about 10 seconds, shouldn't be past the second dot, and it shouldn't be underneath the first dot. Now, sometimes you pull the dipstick out, and there's still oil in the tube, and it kind of climbs up the side, and it might give you a false reading. You say, well, that's a lot of oil, but I flip it over, and look, there's hardly any on the other side. So I'm going to say that, maybe this isn't overfilled, but at the same time, maybe the oil's crawling up on one side of the dipstick. So I put it in again to check. And I'm going to flip it over again. And when I do flip it over again, I'm going to kind of go to the future here. You're going to see that it's halfway through. And when it's halfway through, it's still fine. You can drive on that. On this car in particular, when it's at the halfway mark, you can sometimes add about a half to a quarter of a quart. See there, it's right there, halfway. So you don't want to go past that second dot. When it's hot, it should be at the second dot. Anyhow, this has got enough oil, but if you were going to add oil, you want to check what kind of oil goes in the car, and that's usually on the oil cap. This car in particular takes either a 0.820 or a 5.820, and you do not want to add oil, especially in a hybrid or some of these newer cars that is not on there. You don't want to throw 5.830 in or 10.840 unless it's an absolute emergency. You want to get the right viscosity oil for your car, and you would loosen that cap, where that's the oil filler cap right there on the valve cover. And most people would use a funnel, but I've been doing this for, a long time, so I can actually kind of pour it in. And I'm just going to pour some in as a demonstration, just to show you what you do. And you never pour in more than you need. You never want to overfill an engine. So on the side of that bottle, there was a bunch of markers to show you measuring to see how much is in there. We're just pouring in a little bit, just like that, to show you the oil goes in there. I could have put in maybe, like I said, I could have put in maybe about a quarter of that if I wanted to, but it's still good if it was low. Sometimes it'd take a full quart, and I'm just lining up the valve cover cap there. Because when you're done, you screw it down tightly, you make sure you don't strip out the threads, and you just kind of wipe it off, because if you don't do that, when you fire up the car, it's going to spit oil all over the engine of that cap and make a mess, and it's going to burn on the valve cover and smoke and stink. And so right there, that is the brake fluid reservoir. Now, see, this one's a little bit above max, which is not great, and it says .3 brake fluid. Never put anything but .3 brake fluid in a .3 brake fluid reservoir and never get dirt in it. You'll regret that when you have to redo the whole brake system. So this takes .3. It really shouldn't be past the max line because you don't want to damage the braking system, the hydraulic braking system. But this car is fine. We don't got to put anything in there. You never put anything but brake fluid in there. Now this is the radiator cap, and you push down and you open it. Never open it when it's hot. And you see the radiator is full of the red or pink Toyota coolant. It's good. I put the cap back on. Never open a radiator cap when it's hot and the car's been running for a while. It's a pressurized system full of steam. It will burn you. That's what it says on the cap. Don't open it hot. Right here, this is the Coolant Overflow bottle. It's really not a big thing. It's got that pink red Toyota coolant in it. It's fine. It's also got some marks on it for a high and a low. It's got some overflow in there, so I know it's good. You can add coolant in there too, and usually the system will pick it back up and put it in the radiator. But it's got to see a max right there, and max hot and a low cold. So you kind of, you don't want to top something like that off either. But you can put coolant in there, and sometimes it'll go back in the radiator. Now, I'm going to go ahead and squeeze this upper radiator hose. Now this goes down into the radiator and it goes into the block. We're just squeezing it to make sure the hose isn't too squishy, it's not too firm, and there's no bulges. We just look at it, and that radiator hose looks good. Now we check the belts. That's our drive belt, our serpentine belt. Make sure it's not cracked, worn, that it's not loose and flopping around. It's on the teeth. You know, that belt's fine. So we can leave it alone. I'm just pulling on it and just with my finger just to make sure it's on there good. Now I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to go to, there's a actual second coolant reservoir, and I just check it and make sure that this is not the overflow. I just make sure that it's got fluid in it. Same thing, do not open this if the engine has been hot for a while. And you can add a little bit of Toyota coolant in there too for a Toyota, or Honda for a Honda. Don't mix manufacturers in this day and age, and don't use cheap multi-purpose stuff on these Asian cars. And so it's got marks full and low, and we know it's good, and I'm just going to take the cap off. This car's been sitting all night, so I know that the engine's nice and cold, and the caps aren't going to come flying off and blow steam in my face and burn my eyes out and blind me. So it's got coolant in there. It's looking good. Coolant's nice and clean. It's not black. It's not green. It's the right color. And so I'm satisfied with my coolant, my oil, my brake fluid, my hoses, my belt. Now I'm going to look. Now this is a hybrid. See, now right here, that's probably where the battery would be in a normal gas-powered, just gas alone Camry. Do not, there's going to be two red connectors there. Do not disconnect those. Unless you happen to know something about high voltage, you could actually kill yourself. And those two red cables that you're going to see in a minute, they hook up to a hybrid battery in the trunk. Do not unhook them unless you know what you're doing. So I'm actually going to keep going here. And I said, now this is a hybrid, so the battery in this Camry is in the trunk, both batteries. The hybrid battery and the actual car battery for the gasoline engine is in the trunk. If you were going to jump start this car, there's a way to jump start it on the car battery in the trunk. I'm not going to cover that in this. Get a towing service like AAA to come out and help jump start it if you don't know how to jump start a car. The hybrid battery is tucked underneath. It's in a black box in the trunk. It's really not accessible. You really can't touch those cables to go ahead and jump it and make a mistake. But do not ever try and jump start one of these cars. Unless you already know how to jump start a car, and you'll find the battery if you look in the owner's manual hidden in a compartment in the side in the trunk. Again, you know, I'm not going to go on to jump starting a car. Call an auto club service, have a neighbor help you, but never ever, you know, try and jump a car with the hybrid battery. You could kill yourself, they could kill themselves. It's just really a bad idea. So I'm going to also go on here a little bit more about all of this stuff was done with the engine off. So you saw that I was sticking my finger there in the belts and touching the engine. So this car has been sitting all night. It's nice and cold. So I'm not worried about burning myself. You could burn yourself in there if the car's been running for a half an hour, sometimes 15 minutes. You stick your finger in there when the car's on, when the belts are on, you're gonna be without a finger. So you got to do all these things with the engine off, and you know, I just feel that this has to be said. You know, this is actually just a regular check that everybody should know how to do on their car, regardless. And you should be doing it, you know, once a week, at least once a month, you know, on your car, just to make sure that it's full of oil, the belts are good, the hoses aren't bad, and you know, I did pick a hybrid for this. You know, hybrids are here to stay, and they're probably going to be taking over the world pretty soon. So it's kind of important to know a little bit about them. But it really is important to know how to check the oil in your car, how to add oil, how to add coolant, all this stuff. And I'm just going to cover a little bit here about cars, because I know there's a lot of people that are car guys, car girls, and they already know. So anyhow, you know, I was kind of talking about that red-pink Toyota coolant, and there's like actually a blue Honda coolant. I forget, Dodge Mopar has one, Chevy has something else. So in some of these newer cars, you want to add the right approved coolant for the auto manufacturer. You know, I mean, unless you have yourself like a 1990 Chevrolet, whatever, or Ford something, then you could probably put that green goo in there, or the multi-purpose whatever. But on these newer cars, from what I've been told by a lot of mechanic friends here, is you want to put the right coolant in the car, and you know, if you don't, you could actually kind of damage the motor, damage some of the parts. There's a lot of electronic components in these new cars. Something called electrolysis happens, so you always want to put the manufacturer's coolant in there. I mean, unless it's an emergency. And while we're talking about coolant here, and I hope this comes in handy to someone, if you don't check your car, and let's say it overheats, you blow a radiator hose, something, or whatever, or something happens, it overheats, there's not enough coolant in it, and it's hot and it overheats, never ever take cold water from a hose, or, just generally warm, kind of like room temperature water, and put it in a radiator if the car is overheated. Now, the reason I'm going to say this is because you can crack the engine block. You could damage the radiator too. That would be the less costly repair versus cracking an engine block. And I say that because, this is 2022. Even in some of the more basic cars, an engine is going to cost you $4,000 for a brand new engine, and that doesn't include the installation fee. So again, and one more thing here, we're going to go over the brake fluid reservoir that I showed you, and this is also important stuff to know. Do not put the wrong type of brake fluid in a brake fluid reservoir, and you don't want to put oil in there. You put nothing but brake fluid in it, and don't let brake fluid touch the paint of the car, or you're going to be sorry. If you put the wrong dot fluid in a brake fluid reservoir, you can actually ruin the system, swell the seals, and destroy your brake system, and then it's going to have to be towed to a shop and flushed and fixed. So, brake fluid's something you want to be careful with, and again, don't get it on the paint, whatever you do. It's not like oil or transmission fluid. Once it's on the paint, I feel sorry for you. So, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And the other thing too is you could see that the oil, if you go back in the beginning of the video, was actually kind of an amber color. It was a little dirty, but it wasn't, like needing an oil change. But the picture that I've been using for this video here actually shows what it looks like when you have coolant in your oil, or water in your oil, and you get this sludge. And that's also usually when you've cracked the block, or you've blown a head gasket, and that's major engine repairs. So anyhow, guys, it's really important to know how to inspect your car and check it. It can save you costly repairs down the line. This is just for those people who don't know how to check their car. Apparently there's more people than I had thought. Just kind of wanted to throw an educational video out there. And again, with these hybrids, hey, the hybrid battery, it's high voltage, guys, and I've heard of people dying touching the cables of a fully charged hybrid battery or connected to a hybrid battery. And I've heard of other people taking a serious trip to the emergency room. Leave it for the mechanics. Leave it for people who know what they're doing. So I hope you guys learned something from this. And thank you for watching Derp Your Hooves. And for all you flight simmers out there, I look forward to seeing you guys in the sky.